greatest thing I've ever done in my entire life. Okay? I was born for this. I was born. I was born for this. Okay? Everybody cares about what I'm about to say. Everybody cares. People care. People want to hear me talk for 45 minutes. People want that. And I'm going to give the people what they want without feeling super, super, super weird about it. I can do this. I can do this. Hi, my name is Cindy and welcome back to my channel. Last week was fucked. Last week was not okay. It was the election week, and apparently the tiny orange man who looks like Elmer Fudd mixed with a Sesame Street character mixed with Play-Doh and a thumb won the hearts of the majority of Americans, which is something that I will never be able to conceive in my mind. But here we are. Here we are. The women, me included, are outraged. We are upset for very valid reasons. And honestly, I just felt like sleeping the entirety of last week. I just felt so exhausted. And a lot of women that I spoke with about this also felt the same way. I am excited to get back to YouTubing. I did a Q&A on my Instagram a couple of weeks ago asking if y'all had questions about any of the videos that I've done, and I got some really good questions that I am going to answer. We all know by now I was abused as a child, okay? Just plain and simple. It's dark. I was, and that's just what the universe dealt to me. The universe dealt me with a really fucked up system to be raised in, and by proxy, I was very hurt in the most vulnerable way possible. I feel like being really honest. And I recorded a video with Sam for her channel Zelf on the Shelf, which many of you subscribe to her and are here because of that. And I talked about my childhood a little bit more in depth, but kind of the focus was on my experience going to rehab in 2021. So if you haven't watched that, go and watch that and then come back here and watch this, because I know that you want to hear me talk for 2 hours. Okay. First question. How did your family find out about your abuse? How did you handle that as a young girl when it happened? Okay. My abuser was my older brother, and I've never really said that publicly, but I feel empowered to do that. I think coming off of this horrifying election week has just made me want to bring these things to light. I guess I just feel empowered as a woman, as a young girl who never had a voice and was just told to put up and shut up. And I'm sick of that. I'm super sick of that. This happened to me. It was real. It's happened to so many people. It's very difficult to talk about. When abuse involves your immediate family, it's really hard to talk about that openly and publicly, as you can imagine. So it happened when I was really little. And at that time, I just thought that it was totally normal. I had no way of contextualizing it. It just was normal everyday life for me. Um, and I have a lot of memories of the abuse happening, obviously, in the home I was raised in. I have memories of it happening on family vacations. Nobody knew about it when it happened. No one knew about it, which is shocking because I lived in a household of 10 people. And my heart breaks for that younger version of me, because why why was I spending so much time alone with this brother? And honestly, I don't consider him to be family or my brother, really. Um, at least I am trying to identify him solely as my abuser and not someone who means anything to me. Although he does mean something to me because he changed my life forever, forever. I don't remember when the abuse stopped. And I'll just be completely honest. I was not only molested, but I was raped by this brother. Um, at least attempted rape. He was a teenager, I think about 16 or 17 at the time, and I was 5, 6, 7 years old. So, yeah, you can imagine that that probably wouldn't have been really successful for very dark, intimate reasons. But I can talk about this. I can. This is my story to tell. And if people are going to be mad about it, then so be it. So be it. Be mad. I'm mad. I'm mad that that happened to me. That's what they should be mad about. Anyway, all I remember is it happening in the first home that I lived in, the home that I was born in. And then when we moved to our other home, when I was about 8 or 9, I don't have memories of the abuse happening in that house. But I may have blocked a lot of it out. Honestly, I'm positive that I blocked stuff out. I was around 12. And again, I hadn't really been thinking about what was done to me when I was younger. But one day I was called into a room in my home, and in that room was my abuser, my brother, and then another family member. And this other family member said, I just walked in and my brother was sobbing in the corner. And even though I, as a young child, didn't understand the weight of what happened to me, when I walked in as a 11, 12-year old, um, and saw that he was in there sobbing, and then my other family member was in there, I, in my mind, thought, I know exactly what this is about. I know what this is about. It's about what we did to each other when I was younger. And this other family member looks at me and says, I had no idea that he did this to you. And I said, it's okay. I love him. He's my brother. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Because I didn't, I was confused as to, I was really confused. My mind was racing and trying to grasp on to any feeling that was going to help me feel safe in that moment. And the only feeling that I could think was, it's okay. I love him. Like, it's not a big deal, which is insane and sad. And this family member looked at me and said, you know, it's not your fault, right? And again, very confused. And I just said, yeah, of course. Like, I love him. It's my brother. And I ended up comforting my brother, my abuser, and this other family member because they were both distraught. And I remember hugging my abuser and like comforting him. And he was in his early 20s at this point. And he was a very troubled person, obviously. Um, and he was trying to go on a Mormon mission. And I talked about this in my first video that I did, but my family was a very prominent family in the Mormon community that we lived in Southern California. We, my, I had 10 siblings, not including myself, so there were 11 kids, and so that's a lot of kids to uphold the Mormon righteous image that was very important to my parents. And I understand why it was important to them. It was all they knew, and it was what they thought brought them safety. And so and safety and acceptance. So obviously they wanted that for their children, and I can't really fault them for that. They were also raised in the system of Mormonism, which is just entirely fucked up, and coupled with a giant ass family, there's just not a lot of room to have a functional, healthy family system. So the focus at this time, when I had this conversation with them, it was to get my brother on a mission. That was the priority. And I didn't know that or realize that kind of at the time, but looking back, it's very obvious that that was the priority, because it was about a 5 to 7 minute conversation in that room, and I was dismissed from the room and walked back to my bedroom feeling the most confused I've ever felt in my life. I just started thinking, like, that was wrong. I don't understand, like, why the whole conversation, even though I was so young, I knew it was incredibly heavy. And I think, outside of my abuse, being raised in this very dysfunctional family, I was already hyper aware of mood changes. I was already hyper aware of just bad feelings, but that's kind of just what I was used to. So I just was so fucking confused, and it was never spoken about again. And my brother left on his mission a few days later. The family member that was in that room never spoke to me about it again. And no one knew. No one knew except for the three of us until I was 27, when I began to process it and I brought it out to light. How did you handle that as a young girl when it happened? Again, I didn't really have a choice except to just keep on living. I just never felt good. I never felt good in my brain, my body. And it's obvious why. But it makes me really, really angry. It makes me very angry for younger Cindy. I was failed miserably. I was not only abused, but heavily neglected and abandoned by people that were supposed to be protecting me. And it was entirely unfair and did not make any sense and was not rational or healthy or good or safe. It just wasn't, it was not fair to me. And whenever I have struggled in life, this anger comes out. Like, I'm struggling because of this cataclysmic event that happened, this catastrophic event or events over years. And that makes me so mad, because it seems like such an easy thing to protect a little girl, vulnerable girl, and then when you find out about it, to get her help and to get him help. He shouldn't have gone on a mission. He should have gotten help. He should have gone to counseling. He should not have been allowed to go on a mission by just confessing in a room one night and confessing to the bishop, which that's what I was told. He was going to confess to the bishop, and then just sending him off on a mission, teaching people, families, young children. No, that should have never happened. And I should have gotten help. I should have at least had another conversation, a follow-up conversation. But no, I was just left to fend for myself emotionally, mentally, physically. And yeah, fucked up doesn't even begin to describe it. How did your sexual abuse affect your sexuality later? This is a really interesting question. It absolutely affected it greatly. I remember, being in middle school, high school, and of course, as a young girl, being raised in a very conservative household and religion, um, the topic of boys, started to come up the older that I got as I turned 16. And I would have crushes on boys, but I just remember feeling so frozen when it came to acting upon those feelings. Like, I felt like it was the scariest thing in the entire world. And, you know, obviously in hindsight, it's because I was completely taken advantage of by a boy who was in my immediate family. Like, duh, I felt terrified to interact with the opposite sex. But, I turned 16 and that's when I could start dating. I had older sisters that, always had some guy that they were talking to or a boyfriend, and I was kind of following that pattern or that kind of example of interacting with boys. But I could not fathom it. Anytime I would have feelings for someone, um, and then if they started having feelings back, I immediately was like, I couldn't eat. Like, I felt so just panicked in my body and just immediately just like, oh, I don't have feelings for them anymore, because it just I could not, it it was impossible to compute in my brain that anyone would want me, or anyone would genuinely have feelings for me or want to kiss me or go on a date with me. It just didn't make sense. And I just felt terrified of the experience overall. And I honestly felt like a loser. So, in high school, I think I went on maybe 2 dates total, and I did everything I could to get out of them as fast as possible. I think both of them were 45 minutes long each, because I just, the thought of getting close to someone in an intimate way, I thought that I was gonna die. Like, I thought, yeah, I didn't kiss anyone in high school. I go to college and I had a really kind of maybe unique college experience. Not the typical, a Mormon girl goes to BYU, moves into the dorms, and has a very Mormon experience, tons of group dates, tons of activities to meet other single men, boys, really, at that point. Sorry. Because I didn't get into BYU. I was not a very good student growing up in high school. I didn't know how to be a good student. Like, and I have massive ADHD, and I know that played a role. And then also just having a brain that was just constantly in panic and constantly worried about what other people were thinking about me. And there was not a ton of room to be a good student, to get good grades, to be good about doing my homework. There was just not a lot of room for that. You know what I mean? I was kind of just busy trying to survive when I didn't even know how to survive. I didn't even know. So, anyway, didn't get into BYU. And my dad said, "You're going to the next best school that you get into." And the priority was for me to go off to Utah for college, because that was just pretty typical, at least in our Mormon family. So didn't get into the Lord's school. So then I went to Satan school, which was the University of Utah. Most of my friends were going to BYU, having that typical college or typical Mormon college experience. Definitely not a typical college experience at all. I don't know a ton of college experiences where you walk to a creamery and get cookies and cream milk and drink it just by itself. I think that's pretty niche, I'd say. So I lived in Salt Lake. All my friends were in Provo. I didn't know anyone, had no friends going to that school. I knew literally no one. I did not move into the dorms. My parents did not want me to because of the risk of me being led down a darker path. Kind of wish I did move into the dorms because I feel like that would have broke me in a little bit better. But instead, I moved off campus in with a bunch of girls that were much older than me, the age that I am now, which is 33, and some of them were even older. Here I was, first year in college, and I moved in with a bunch of girls that were not in the same place as me at all in life. I was just starting out. I should have been having experiences like, yeah, dating, going to parties, having fun, getting into the spirit of college, like going to football games, going to basketball games. Like I should have had that experience. But since I did not know a single person, like I was so fucking depressed. And so, of course, I wasn't dating anyone. Like, how could I have dated anyone living in the situation that I was? I failed so many classes that year, so many classes. And I honestly just spent most of my freshman year in college in my bedroom crying, which is just, it makes me so upset. It makes me so upset. For 18-year-old Cindy, like understanding myself now, like I am such a wonderful person. I'm such a fun, outgoing person. And to think that I spent like my first couple of years in college just so alone and just so sad and so depressed and just with almost zero social skills, like it just makes me so upset. And I just never want either of my daughters to ever experience that. Oh, it's just so fucked. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. There was no reason why I should have had that experience. There's just no reason. It's not okay. I don't want to mess up my eyeliner because I killed it today. Anyway, didn't date anyone. And then I can't remember what year it was, but I ended up moving to Provo to be closer to my friends. Still experienced a lot of loneliness because I was like the tag along friend. You know, all of them had really established groups, communities, because they had been living with people since freshman year and having a lot of the same experiences at BYU. And so I was just kind of the third wheel just all the time. So that was kind of hard, but again, I didn't go on any dates. I think I went on one date, and it was right before I went on a mission. And when I decided to go on a mission, you guys, I still view that as a really positive decision for myself. I felt very, very confident in doing that. And I think, it gave me a sense of purpose when I felt so purposeless and so like such a nomad in this world, so just navigating the world alone. And this felt like a decision, something that I was controlling, that I was in charge of, like that I was confident in. And also I was getting a lot of validation from people like, you're so amazing, that's such an incredible decision, like just so it felt like I was receiving really positive validation for the first time in my life. Yeah, I had decided to go on a mission, and then I think I went on one date with this guy, and I think I gave him like a peck, and was my first kiss when I was 21 years old. And I honestly don't even consider that my first kiss. I consider my first kiss to be with my future husband, and then husband, and now ex-husband. As far as my sexuality goes, I mean, I never even thought that it could be a possibility that I could be attracted to women at all. I mean, I barely knew what being gay was. I the concept of homosexuality and queerness like that, I did not get that whatsoever. Hell, when I was a teenager in high school, I stood on the side of the road holding signs for Prop 8 to ban same-sex marriage in California, to not legalize it. Hello, like I just knew it was sinful and wrong, so I never went down that path ever, ever, ever. Kind of backing up, my freshman year in college, as fucked up as it was, I discovered masturbating for the very first time as an 18-year-old. I didn't even know what it was. I didn't even have a name for it until, I don't know, I was going to the church's website and trying to find like what I was experiencing in my body, because LDS.org has all the answers, including answers about my sexuality and ownership over my body and what it was doing. Obviously, I found out that, oh, I'm masturbating, and that is evil and sinful and wrong. But it was one of the first experiences that I felt some sort of good sexual feeling, but it didn't last very long because I felt so much disgust with myself. Like, this is so awful, this is horrible. When I did start to masturbate, I dabbled in very soft corn, like not legit corn. It was nothing at all, but it did involve some girl on girl action, and I do remember being turned on by that, but then immediately feeling like I am satanic, like this is not okay for me to be feeling, so I never explored it. But sexuality just in general for me, knew that the only option was to be attracted to men and to date men and to kiss men. That was the only, when I came home from my mission, I got married super quickly to a man. And obviously, I've since gotten a divorce and have been single for the last few years. And my sexual abuse definitely influenced how I behaved with my sex life when I was married. I was still very traumatized. I hadn't worked through anything. It played a huge role in understanding my body, understanding what feelings were okay to feel. I'm just going to be honest with you. I can count on two hands the amount of times that I had an orgasm during my marriage. And it's not a lot to do with my husband at the time. I didn't know my body. I didn't know how to do that. Kind of like, I didn't know how to have an orgasm. So incredibly inexperienced and barely knew the anatomically correct terms for my lady parts. Like, I barely knew that. And so, how the hell was I supposed to know how to make myself feel good in that way? I don't know. I don't know. I was in a completely different part of myself when I was married. It's kind of mind blowing to me. And our marriage was not perfect, not entirely due to me. Like, we both played a role. It was our first time, being married, and it was a very Mormon marriage. And I attribute so many of our issues to that. Spent the majority just very traumatized in fight or flight or freeze. So there wasn't a lot of room for me to kind of explore my sexuality, if that makes sense. It wasn't until I started deconstructing my faith and, started accepting that I might be bisexual. This was right before the pandemic. And I think had, learned of some friends that had left the church or something, and they were starting to identify as bisexual. And so it got me thinking about it. And it was a really hard thing to navigate within my marriage, just me having that realization that I was attracted to women, like, legitimately. When I went to rehab, I had my first queer friendships. And they gave me the confidence to accept that I am bisexual. And something that was really difficult was pretty much everyone in my life found that out while I was in rehab, and I did not get the opportunity to even really like come out to them. Um, Not that that's technically a thing anymore, but in very Mormon conservative systems, communities, it is a thing. When I came home from rehab and I was getting a divorce, like, I just really wanted to experience being with other people. That was a huge motivator for me in getting a divorce. And that might sound really shallow and weird, but if you are a woman who was raised in the Mormon church and had very little dating experience before getting married, and you got married super young and had kids super young, I know that you understand it, and I don't have to explain what I mean. I just had this craving to be with other people, to have sex, to just activate that part of me. And so I did. I started, making out with people. I started just kind of like right away. And again, I was already separated from my husband, and I just kind of hit the ground running, so to speak. I quickly got into a relationship with someone who was way more experienced sexually than me. And here's little naive me, who at that point, I think I had like failed sex with one person other than my husband, after we separated. It just was not a good experience with this boy. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, this is not, like, I'm hot. Like, why can't your parts work? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. I met this guy who was a lot more liberated sexually than I was. Um, and he honestly was a huge part of my sexual awakening. I started having consistent orgasms during sex for the first time. And that was just mind blowing to me. And the best part of our relationship was sex, and that's why it took me so long to get out of it. It was such a toxic relationship. He was doing coke and heroin the whole time that we were together, and I had no idea because I was so naive, and I didn't know about any of those things really. I was so trauma bonded with him because we had both experienced sexual abuse as kids when we were younger, and then here we were, like, we had this really strong sexual connection, and I was fully addicted to that. It kept me in that relationship for probably a year, because I just thought, I'm never going to have this kind of relationship with anyone else. Like, I'm never going to have good sex with anyone else, and I was just so attached to that. But eventually got out of that, and I just started sleeping with a lot of men. I was going on a ton of dates, having very casual sex every single weekend that I possibly could. And I'm really grateful for that phase. Like, I'm really glad, because it taught me a ton of things about what I like and what I don't like, and what is not okay for men to do. I learned a lot more about consent, the importance of speaking up for myself. And you can call me a slut, you can call me a hoe. I don't really care. I actually don't care at all, because it was a very valuable experience for a couple of years. There was one point where I slept with three different men in the span of less than a week, and then I was like, you know what? I maybe let's pump the brakes a little bit. Let's go make sure that we're getting tested and that we're safe. And which, by the way, if you're gonna have a bunch of casual sex, make sure that you're getting tested regularly. I fully encourage casual sex, but just make sure that you're being safe. And by some miracle, I never contracted anything, which is wild considering the amount of sex that I was having with multiple different partners at the same time. Be safe, be responsible when you are having sex. I have never been with a woman, and this is where the other side of the coin of my sexuality comes into play, because I felt like the experiences that I had, dating a bunch of men, that really healed a lot of my issues as far as my sexuality with men. But the attraction that I felt for women, and facing, my sexuality in relation to women, that's an entirely different ball game. Because yes, my abuse had to do with a male, but there was also a very big part that had to do with a woman. Not that she sexually abused me, but she was very, very involved in covering it up. Well, she was the only person involved in covering it up and not getting me help. And to be totally honest, I have more intimate trauma with women than I do with men, because of how betrayed I was by this woman who was supposed to protect me. And which is why I've never felt confident or strong enough to date women, be with a woman. It's a part of my sexuality that has been massively affected. And I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to heal that. I say that, and I'm sure one day, like, I'll look back and realize, like, oh, I made it. Like, I've I am confident in that area of my life. It feels so impossible to me, because I have a lot of trust issues with women in an intimate setting, or just the possibility of an intimate situation with a woman. It terrifies me for much more complex reasons than me being terrified of being with a man, which I know sounds really weird, but when you are betrayed by a woman who's supposed to be protecting you so early on in life, it's hard to come back from that. I've done a lot of work. Like, I've done a shit ton of therapy, you guys, and I feel really grateful for that. But that is something that I have kind of avoided. This question is about my deconstruction of patriarchy in my dating paradigm, and how I question chronic dating choices. In the beginning of dating, I was kind of like a teenager, and when I was 30, 31, I would catch feelings for guys that were just very emotionally unavailable, and I was still very much healing my anxious attachment wounds, and still am to this day. I was often attracted to men who couldn't give two shits about me. I would sleep with them really quickly because that's something that I really craved, and I was just horny all the time. They would ghost me, or they just acted like they didn't give a shit, which was kind of fucked with my brain a little bit, because here I was finally accessing this part of me that has been so, trapped for so long, and then they acted like they couldn't care less. After 100 or so experiences like that, I realized maybe I'm going after the wrong men, but it just ended up being that I just kind of gave up on dating altogether. I think for most of my life I've sought the approval of men, for sure. My mission kind of exacerbated that because I just didn't have a strong, like, fatherly figure. I grew really attached to the validation of my mission president. I'm self-aware enough to know that I'm still deconstructing the patriarchy. Decentering men is something that I'm always working on. Bringing the conversation to the current date. Despite it all, I am still able to see the joy in life and the beauty in life, and to, for the most part, stay strong for myself and for my daughters and try to figure things out. But honestly, I'm lost as far as a career goes. Like, I'm lost as far as making money goes. And now the anticipation of another Trump presidency, I'm fucking scared. I, a couple days ago, wrote a few things down that I really, really want. I'm trying to manifest, guys. I'm trying to manifest. And one of those things on that piece of paper is to be financially independent. So that is going to be my focus for 2025. And it's going to happen. It's gonna happen. You know it. I know it. We're gonna fucking do this. I'm gonna fucking do this one way or another. And, I haven't talked about this, I don't think, on my channel yet, but it's so crazy, you guys. When I separated from my husband and I was leaving the church, a couple months later, my dad was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, and he passed away within 6 months. So within the span of 9 months, marriage ended, left a cult, and my dad died. In times like this where I'm scared for my financial future and I don't understand how to become financially independent, I talk to my dad all the time. I'm like, Dad, I know that you have to be guiding me. I know that he is, and I know that the answer or solution to these things is out there, and I just have to activate it. And it's really hard when every day of my life I'm, fighting the urge to spiral. I'm just a girl. I'm literally just a girl who was formerly in a cult, was raised in a dysfunctional family, who was basically a newborn baby at the age of 30 in the outside world. I'm 33 now, and I'm literally just a girl trying to live life. So, like this video, comment if you have any follow-up questions about anything that I discussed. Please let me know. I always feel like my videos just take a dark turn and are just difficult, kind of dark conversations, which I don't love, but who cares? Who the fuck cares? Subscribe to my channel so I can reach 1,000 subscribers. I love you. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.